Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Scotiabank Charity Challenge home stretch. My name is Ryan Green. I am lucky enough to be your moderator today. I have the fortunate time to spend with Dr. Greg Wells, who I'll tell you about in a second. But I did just want to go over why I am here. Through the Scotiabank team, I've been invited to come on. I have been a part of the marathon world for a number of years, both stateside and in Canada. I love the sport. I love the mentality behind the sport, which is kind of why I feel very intrigued about this next little bit. I've run several marathons, endurance sports myself. I've produced them. I've worked for all the shoe companies that you can name. I've had kind of an illustrious, multifaceted career in that world. But honestly, the interesting part really comes with our guest today, Dr. Greg Wells, who I'm happy to introduce. I don't want to minimize anything here, but I certainly have a long list of things to get through here, guys. Not only is he the CEO and founder of Wells Performance, which is a global consulting firm helping people reach their optimal performance. He's worked with Olympic athletes, world champions. He works with kids, teams, adults, making sure they're getting what they need. Very much involved with the Hospital for Sick Children here in Toronto, a best-selling author of 4 books, one of which I didn't know the title, and I'm very intrigued to hear what your thoughts are on that. And an endurance athlete himself, which maybe we'll get to at the end. Interested to hear about some of your experiences, Greg. But guys, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I know I probably went over it quickly, but there was a lot to go over. Dr. Greg Wells, welcome in.
Ryan, good to see you. Thanks for having me out. And yeah, we'll just have a great chat and help people and try to get everybody out there and inspired to run a little bit.
Love it. Awesome. Okay, so first things first, and this is kind of what I want to jump into just to get everything, the groundwork laid. Your bio talks about you obsessing working with health and performance, and particularly under extreme conditions. So 2 parts here. Let's talk about what health and performance means to you and how they're combined, and then what that extreme conditions might mean for both yourself, the people you work with, and then anyone else that we could be talking to today.
Got it. So yeah, I grew up as an athlete. I was a competitive swimmer growing up. So began to, understand health and well-being and high performance when I was 15 because I broke my neck at a training camp in Florida. And so right away when I was young, I began to learn about medicine and like how to get better and became interested in the human body, did a kinesiology degree. I actually got back into swimming and then did a kinesiology degree all the way through university. After that, did grad school, master's, PhD in human physiology, different aspects of it. Started working with the Olympic team and just loved every second of the high performance side of everything that we're doing, both personally and professionally. But I also became fascinated by health, and not just health in terms of like breaking your neck and getting not sick, but just how when the athletes were actually healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, that they were able to perform at such a higher level. And more recently, I published a book called The Ripple Effect, where I really just threw away all of my sports inclinations and only explored like nutrition for health, mindset for health, exercise for health, like not for training, but just for being, not sick. And that book exploded. So I think that they're intimately connected. I actually think that high performance is only achievable when you are truly, deeply, completely healthy. And so I've sort of, as I approach 50, I've become a little bit more obsessed with overall health than I have with performance. But I think that they're intimately connected and one leads the other and vice versa.
Got it. Yes. I'm myself a huge fan of kind of the mental and physical state working together. Your book, Rest, Refocus, and Recharge, that struck a chord with me right away because, of course, one of my favorite little sayings is the most important part of any workout is the recovery. So how do you connect that side of the challenges physical to taking it back to the mental side to then empower the physical side again?
Yeah, for sure. So you're right. I mean, recovery is the most important part of the workout. Like we only train maybe an hour or 2 a day, 4 hours maybe if you're trying to make the Olympics or something like that. And that still leaves 20 hours a day to be recovering, which is like nutrition, which is sleep, which is meditation, which is all these other things. Like the vast majority of our lives, even for the top athletes in the world, is spent in recovery. And that wasn't a big part of training when I was growing up. It became a huge part of the work that I did with the Olympians. And now I want to share that information with everybody because we're learning about things like how saunas can increase blood volume and extend life. We're learning about how cold can shift people from sympathetic nervous system activation to parasympathetic nervous system activation, which is your recovery and regeneration system. So we're also learning about sleep. There's so many things that we've discovered now that apply to everybody that can enable all of us to live such a better life. And I think one of the interesting things about this COVID time is it's almost forced the entire world into a pause, which has given us a chance to reevaluate our lives and what we're doing and just how busy we were. And I think that we can actually do things very differently moving forwards. And that's what I'm hoping people can latch onto in some of these ideas.
Just on the COVID thing, Greg, what obviously we are all dealing with the limitations, the handcuffs, the shutdowns, which is our current mental state of how we look at this. And maybe this is a bigger conversation. But you said the word opportunity. What do you see in this time, this COVID, this new normal? Where do you see the upstarts and the positives and the opportunities to excel in whatever sport they're
Fair enough. Good question. First of all, let's acknowledge the fact that there's people that are sick, there's people that are dying. This has been a very difficult time. I'm very fortunate. I'm sheltering in place with my family in a very nice house. I've got a park in the backyard and I'm close to the beach in Toronto. I'm not confined in a 400 square foot apartment for months on end, and I'm not living with anyone that's alcoholic or abusive. So I'm very fortunate and very, very grateful for the situation I'm in to be able to even think about the fact that this could be an opportunity. I am relentlessly positive, however, so I will just sort of throw it out there that this is, I believe, a chance for us all to reimagine the future. All of the events that we had planned and were registered for are gone. A lot of our commuting time has been given back to us. We're now working from home. Therefore, in the future, we'll have a choice maybe about whether do we work at home or do we go back to the office. Even schools have been upended. I've got 2 little kids and we're trying to figure out, do they go back to school or not?
Right.
So we have this incredible opportunity to reimagine our lives, having had the slate wiped clean. So for everyone watching, listening, I really want us to think what do we love in our lives? What is important to us? What type of a life do we want to live? What type of things are we going to get involved in moving forwards? How are we going to construct our days? And I think that given that the slate has been wiped clean, we have a new canvas upon which we can build a very cool, interesting, safe future. So that's what I was thinking on that one. And yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that too.
Well, it's funny you say that. I read a very interesting, whether it was a Twitter or a meme or whatever it came through, and maybe I've seen more than one version at this point, but we are, given the situation and given all the things that we are dealing with, we are also in a very fortunate position that we will know both realities.
Yes.
We will be the community that came from that last month of what we were, and then able to bring what we can into the new, but leave aside the stuff that doesn't work for us anymore. Whether that be in our physical, our economical, our family lives, all of those things apply. And we have an opportunity to set a stage for the generations coming after us in all of those aspects. So I think if people can take on that mentality of we're not being handcuffed here, we're actually being handed an opportunity, but we have to see through our old selves.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of emerge like a phoenix, right, from this crazy time into hopefully a much, much better future for everybody, regardless of where we're at. So yeah, love that thinking.
It's basically one big injury that we're
exactly a global massive injury.
Yeah, that's a global injury.
We're now in rehab, and hopefully we can start running again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So let me, speaking of the running, with the quarantine, with the COVID, a lot of people, 2 things. A lot of people have taken either back to running or they've decided that that's something they're going to try. And then the people that are getting into it and have been doing it have had to alter their stuff a little bit. And I know, probably as well as I do, runners are, I hate to use the phrase, but type A. We're a little one-track minded, if you will. How have you found, and what kind of conversations are you having with those runners out there who may be having trouble with the new style, or the runners that are coming in and they're just trying to find their way.
Right. So I've had conversations with a lot of kids that are training for the Olympics, had the Olympics postponed, multiple different sports. I work a lot in swimming. So I do some triathlon. So I, run, bike, swim. I've actually spent a lot more time running and swimming this year and sort of not really bothered with the bike. And so I've really been enjoying running, and I find swimming to be my own rehab. Like when I swim, my body just gets better because that's my background, being a competitive swimmer.
Right.
And what I've seen from all of the athletes that I've been working with and speaking to is, initially it was just sort of like, oh my gosh, like everything's been taken away. We have nothing really to train for. We have no events. We don't even know when things are going to get, opened up again. We still are struggling to know whether or not there's going to be an Olympics next year. And certainly it probably won't be with people in the stands. So it'll be very different even if it happens. And so the initial phase was just like, oh, like everything's gone. Then it was a really interesting shift where people just started running, and they just started running because they liked running. They liked the way it made it feel. They didn't have to do that exact workout. They didn't have to hit that exact pace for their training program. They were doing dry land and, strengthening because it felt good and it helped them to be healthier. And so it completely changed into exercise for the sake of really enjoying what you're doing, rather than this like drive to get across the finish line in a certain time, which, by the way, I'm as driven as anyone to get across the finish line in a certain time. And I'm as type A as they come. So I get it. So I'm also probably doing some self-therapy as we're talking right now. So I see now that there's this much better understanding of exercise for the sake of health, exercise for the sake of mental health, doing it for the sake of it's the right thing to do. We do it whether we're training for an event or not for an event. We are just physically active, and we're so fit that, if we choose to go do a race on the weekend, then we're doing that. And maybe if we want to train for 12 weeks to go fast, we can do that as well. But in general, it's just part of our lives. And I really think that that's been a fundamental shift that I've seen right from the Olympic athletes all the way through to, I live in the beaches area of Toronto, and so I'm on a running trail, and there's so many more people out right now. And interestingly enough, there's a lot more parents with kids out now as well. I see, moms and daughters running. I see dads with the kids on the bikes. Like, it's a very, very different vibe now with the amount of people and the multi-generational nature of the people that I see out together doing physical activity. So anyway, yeah, it's a very different feel to it now than there was 6 months ago.
Do you, just on that, Greg, do you feel maybe moving forward that with all of this, with that cross-generational parents and kids, do you feel like the endurance sport or the physical workouts for health being so much more accepted across all the generations as we move forward, kids will be much more health-based? Or do you feel like we've still got a lot of work to do in that area with the younger kids?
Massive progress, but I see still there's a huge amount of work still to do. The parks were closed and taped off, so that was a struggle for many people. Again, I'm fortunate to live where I live, right? I have access to massive areas where people can go and be active, but many of the parks were taped off. And again, I think that was the right decision at the time. However, we've now got to get people out and active and back into those parks so the kids can be active. We know that 85% of people don't get enough physical activity to prevent a chronic disease. So we need people to be physically active. The numbers for kids are far more scary. And this is pre-COVID data. But it's only 4% of girls and 9% of boys who get enough physical activity to prevent a chronic disease. This isn't even to be healthy. It's not to get sick. And so as much as I have seen great progress in the area where I happen to live, I think as a nation, as a culture, as a society, we need to be more physically active. And we can't rely upon them getting phys ed classes in school. We've got to take them out in the evenings to go for a walk. We can't rely upon them going to activities, to gymnastics or whatever it is, to get enough physical activity. We've got to go and play in the park on the weekend. And that goes for, if you have a 6-year-old, if you've got a teenager, if you are 25, if you're 30, if you're 40, like whatever it happens to be, 100 years old, we as a nation need to move more. And that's why, being a part of this conversation and And what Scotiabank's trying to do is so cool, is because we just need to mobilize a lot of people. I remember a very classic moment on Brain. I was doing some CrossFit a few years ago, and there was a gentleman who was coaching me who was just like not into CrossFit for kids. And I was like, you know what? Like only 4% of girls and 9% of boys get enough physical activity to prevent a chronic disease. I don't care if they're doing CrossFit. I just don't want them sitting on a couch playing video games. And he's like, fair enough, moving on. So anyway, yeah.
Oh, it's a valid point. The other thing that, just personally in my life, what I hear a little bit of is the parents who have the kids who, whether for a good reason or a bad reason, are putting them in the gymnastics, putting them into this and putting them into that. Whereas those things are now not available. They've been canceled or they've been taken away. So it is that extra, I guess it could go both ways, whether it's stressful or not so stressful. The parents having to be somewhat more responsible for not only their kids' education, but keeping them active at home all the time, but also making sure that they're not just sitting on their devices, on the couches, and the parents, like the single parents and these folks, how do you kind of suggest to them that it's going to be okay and there's ways to get around these things?
Yeah, I mean, I have infinite sympathy, compassion and gratitude for the single parents who, the mom who's a nurse and she's got 2 kids, and just like how on earth would, does she get through the day? So I have massive gratitude for the work that people do, and also compassion for how difficult that situation would be. I can speak for myself and Judith, my wife, in that we are very grateful for having had the opportunity to spend more time with our kids over the last 4 months. Certainly, I've spent more time with my 5-year-old son than I ever have before because I was traveling so much. I was doing speaking all over the place. I was on Air Canada. I never even saw him, barely. And we have a much better relationship now, having spent that time. I also know that there was a period of time early on in the pandemic when my kids were on their iPads a lot. Sure. And that there was some binge watching of Netflix going on, and it is what it is. And so you just sort of accept and move on. What I would submit to us all to think about now is like, okay, so the activities are starting back up. We're going back to school. Things are going to return to normal. We're all going to be okay. We got whatever we got through, it's not going to be as bad moving forward. So there is going to be a second wave, but what is that? We're way more prepared than we were. So we're going to be all right. But let's choose things deliberately to make our lives better, our kids' lives better. It's totally fine to do gymnastics. It's totally fine to do swim lessons. You should do those things. Music classes, drama, like whatever it happens to be, it's totally fine. But let's deliberately choose and intentionally choose what we're doing, so we don't just make ourselves busy for the sake of being busy. If your child's passionate about gymnastics, get them into gymnastics. But if they hate it, then it's just a babysitting service, and we can do better. And we can spend the time, we can have the meals with our families, we can have those conversations. It's okay just to go for a walk. That's the best exercise you can possibly do for yourself, literally, is going for a walk. I know the runners are like, but it's actually running, and that's fine. You can walk faster and run, but like at its base level, walking's pretty good for you. So I think the message really is intention and being deliberate about how we reconstruct our lives moving forward so that we are healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And when we do that, I think we can be much better as families and as humans moving forwards. The world needs us to do things differently.
Yeah, choose our battles and be honest with ourselves, really. Okay, so let's come off the COVID quarantine a little bit. I know that you've worked with world-class athletes, Olympians, world champions, and I, from my own personal experience and the people that I've worked with over my career, and my own clients and people that I've worked with, a lot of people in the lay world are shocked to hear their coaches or trainers say, "You're an athlete. You're capable. You're a human body just like all of the other people that do it for millions of dollars or gold medals." How do you take the knowledge and the level of expertise that you've crafted with these top athletes and then trickle it down into our Scotiabank marathoners, our virtual runners, I love the connection. I love to make people think that they are capable of doing more and more and more as long as they're willing to do the work. But sometimes it's completely foreign to them to think of themselves in that way. How do you draw your high level expertise down into the masses?
I just love that question. It's so inspiring. I just love learning from the Olympians. I love learning from the masters of whatever it happens to be. Art, music, drama, sports, whatever it happens to be. There's mastery level humans that do those at a different level, and that's totally fine, and that's great. And I love working with them, and I learn a ton from them. But all of us can improve. And so for me, it's not about being the best anymore. It's not about being top 5 in the world and challenging for a medal, although that's cool and fun. It's just about improvement. And I really don't care where we start. I literally don't care. If you are on the couch and you've never done anything in your entire life and you're struggling with depression and obesity, I don't care. All that I care about is, you know what? We can actually put on your shoes. Actually, you can go barefoot if you need to and go around the block once. Like, you've done better. You are an athlete at that level. In fact, the greatest athletic performance I've ever seen in my entire life was at the Hospital for Sick Children in the cancer ward when I was working there as a researcher. And I saw a little girl who was going through chemotherapy and radiation, who was just a mess. And she got up off the bed, walked 10 feet to the bathroom, closed door, went to the washroom by herself, came back to the bed, got back into bed. And that to me was the greatest athletic performance I've ever seen because of the level of effort, intensity, dedication, commitment to not being in bed and getting that done. I was like, oh, that's actually better than any Olympics I've been to 3. That's better than anything else. It's better than Usain Bolt. You win. Congratulations. Here's the medal. Peace out. I'm going to go, rethink my life. So I think that any of us can improve. Any of us can get better. And being part of a training program is going to ensure that happens. Being part of a training group is going to make it easier for that to happen. Being part of a community is going to share your effort and energy with other people, which is going to elevate them. So it's just about being a part of a community, getting better every single day, sleeping a little bit better, eating a little bit better, exercising a little bit more, doing it when you don't necessarily want to do it. And that's everything to me. So that's how I take it down. It's all the same stuff. It's the same struggles. They just go faster than we do. That's okay. We're all doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it is all relative. We're all human, carbon-based forms of life, and we're all capable of whatever it is we choose to be capable of. You've obviously had a ton of experiences and, the education to back it up, and obviously all of the buttons that you push. What are some of the top 2, top 3 best lessons that you've learned or things that you like to pass on to anybody that asks for your best piece of advice?
Probably the best piece of advice is the idea of 1% better. So if we're better 1% every single day, and you compound that over time, you end up improving over the course of a year by a factor of about 38. So it's sort of like 1.01, and you do that, on your calculator 365 times, you're going to have 37.78 at the end of 365 pushes. That's how much you can improve if you're 1% better every day, which is 15 minutes or 20 calories. And so that's all we're trying to do is what can you do today that's going to make you better for 15 minutes? That's meditation, which rewires your brain. That could be an extra 15 minutes of sleep if you're not between 7 to 8 hours. That could be a 15-minute walk, 15 minutes of stretching, 15 minutes of intervals, 15 minutes of hills, up or down. It doesn't really matter. We're just looking to consistently, constantly be 1% better on a day. And that's the number one tip. Consistency matters so much. And if you're consistent, you're going to have amazing improvements. I remember when I worked with a gentleman named Adam Van Koeverden, who's a 4-time Olympian, 3-time Olympic medalist, world record holder, now member of parliament. And one of his go-to workouts as he traveled the world and raced was a 30-minute run. When he got to a hotel in Budapest, he would put on his running shoes and go for a 30-minute run and be like, I'm done for the day. We'd be like, what? He'd be like, that's 30 minutes. He's like, I'm done. I'm tired. That's all I'm doing. But I did my run today. Yeah. And it's weird how these Olympic athletes, they do these little micro workouts, and the little micro workouts add up. And if you keep adding up little micro things, then all of a sudden you've got a completely different life, especially if you're consistent. So that's the number one thing I tell people.
And I think it's important to note, and I think you would agree, that is not just the physical side of things, it is also the mental side of things. That consistency of getting out and doing the thing, whether it's an increase in 1% or 2%, or even just staying the same. The mentality of being able to get up and do it and not put yourself back down in a hole is all, it's everything.
100%. This is mentally emotional, mental, physical, emotional, right? Like it all, and what you just said there is really critical, not putting yourself back into a hole. One of the other sort of 1% tips I would have on the mental side of things is to pay very close attention to your internal chatter. Like, how are you talking to yourself? Are you putting yourself into a hole, or are you talking yourself up? I know you probably talk up all the people around you. Hey, good job, way to go. Amazing that you did that run. Are you doing that to yourself? Are you celebrating yourself inside? That's so huge. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's my big thing about if you write down all the things that you love, how long is the list before you write your actual name?
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Greg, thank you so much. We're unfortunately out of time. I just want to thank everyone for coming on to the Scotiabank Charity Challenge Homestretch programming. We definitely have some more programming, awesome stuff coming your way. Stay tuned for the details. Obviously, all the links to donate are up on the charity pages, all the things you guys need. Just hit that website. Dr. Greg Wells, thank you very much for coming on and spending this time with me and the Scotiabank team. Any last words you'd like to say before we head out?
You know, I'm just so honored and privileged to be here. I really love the fact that we can give back in this time. Love being part of altruistic organizations that do good things for the community. And I love how we've adapted from putting on marathons to just getting people active, moving around and building a community. So couldn't be more proud to be here. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Absolutely good talking to you. Pleasure meeting you. And ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Greg Wells, good luck out there, guys. Have a great season.